Coming up on The Reaction.
At last, some sanity on the trans children debate. We'll be speaking to a former governor of the Tavistock Clinic turned whistleblower about today's landmark report on gender care.
Hooray for this. Kate's been voted the most popular royal in a new poll, with Harry and Meghan languishing near the bottom, along with portly Prince Andrew. Is there any way back into public affection for the Montecito pair? None whatsoever.
No. Plus, why I think Labour are right about the NHS needing radical reform.
And why Amy Winehouse's friends are absolutely hopping mad about that new film all about her life. Well, hello and welcome to Reaction with me. I'm Andrew Pearce.
And me, Sarah Vine. We'll be here every Wednesday on the Daily Mail's YouTube channel, so make sure you like and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.
Well, at last, we've got a voice of sanity in the great row over NHS gender identity services for our children. The outcome of that long-awaited review into NHS transgender treatment has been released 4 years after it started, and it's found that the treatment was based on what the report's author calls remarkably weak evidence.
Dr. Hilary Cass's review, which was commissioned 4 years ago by Matt Hancock, we should point out, makes 32 recommendations to overhaul NHS trans services, as well as highlighting the toxicity of the debate over trans care for kids.
I'm glad you've mentioned Matt Hancock.
Yes.
Because, look,
he's not had the best press, but
he gets a very bad press,
yeah.
But for this alone, he deserves our praise.
Absolutely.
Because it's a fantastic report, 388 pages.
Yeah.
I confess I've not read every one of them, but I've read the thrust of it. What shocked me most, Sarah, was learning that in 2009, 50 young children were referred to the gender identity...
GIDS, as it was called.
Yeah, Gender Identity Development Services. 50, mainly boys, and in 2021-2022, 5,000. Did nobody think, what on earth is happening? It reminds me almost of the post office scandal. Suddenly we have all these honest postmasters and postmistresses, and then suddenly thousands of them have been cooking the books. How was it not allowed? And Sarah, having read this report, I think there should be criminal prosecutions, because these drugs could permanently have damaged these kids.
I think you're right. I think what's really clear from the report is that some clinical practitioners allowed ideology to basically influence their behaviour.
Override common sense.
And override common sense. And, I mean, the thing is you say nobody noticed. We were writing about it. True. I was writing about it. Lots of people have been trying to write about it. And every time I wrote anything about it, I'd get called a TERF.
Yeah, of course. A bigot. It's another word for bigot.
Trans-exclusionary. I know, I can't remember what it stands for, but you'd get shouted at and told that you were a trans bigot. And it's not... The thing is, I think the thing is, nobody is suggesting that gender dysphoria is not dysmorphia. Dysmorphia or dysphoria? Dysphoria is not a real thing, and that people don't get it. But what we were questioning was whether a child, a teenager, like a sort of 12 or 13, 14-year-old, really had the kind of capability to make such a kind of life-changing decision at that stage. And we all know what children are like. We all know what teenagers are like. I've had two teenagers. They kind of get all sorts of mad stuff into their heads that is not, that they then, 1 week they want to do this, the next week they want to do that, And you just have to, as a parent, you have to sort of let them play it out. And quite often it just plays itself, it just burns out, and nothing comes of it.
And the Cass report is devastating in the sense it says not only are they not really capable of making a decision up till they're 18, she's saying because of the development of the brain, 25 really.
So this is something that fascinates me, which is that the frontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for critical thinking, doesn't really develop in humans until they're about 25.
Exactly.
I mean, 21 to 25, obviously everyone's different. So you don't really understand the consequences of your actions. That's basically what that means, is that you can't really be held responsible for, everything. I mean, we know that the age of responsibility in this country is 18, well, sometimes 16.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, that's a very long way off, And my argument with this has always been, have a limit on it. Just say you need to be 21 to make this decision. If you've been living if you're a girl and you've been living as a boy, But I think the reason this thing happened was because somebody said, well, if we can stop a girl who wants to be a boy from going through female puberty, then that's good. And if we can stop a boy from going through male puberty, that's good, because then if they do want to transition, they don't have problems like having a beard or having bosoms or any of those things. And I sort of understand that, but it's not. It's not worth that. That's not worth what's happened here, which is a complete sort of free for all. And I think the other thing to say is that a lot of these issues are psychological, and no one is allowed to say that. No one is allowed to say.
She does in her report.
She does, but she sort of stops.
Yeah.
She's quite. But
she phrases it in a
diplomatic way. But these are psychological issues, and. You know, remember with Keira Bell, you know, she said, you know, the girl who famously transitioned and then decided that she didn't want to transition and took it to the High Court. She said that, you know, actually the problem with her was that she was depressed and she had psychological problems. And a lot of these kids are very vulnerable.
Yeah, and the report does say that, vulnerable, often a problem family, maybe an issue with their parents, maybe an issue with not much money in the household, cry for help. Also, an issue with autism?
Yes.
Did nobody join up the dots?
Yes.
Nobody joined up the dots?
Very confused. Anyway, earlier I spoke to someone who's been central to all of this, psychotherapist Marcus Evans, who is a former governor of the Tavistock Clinic. He resigned in 2019 after blowing the whistle over how the clinic refused to address staff concerns about inadequate care. He's also the author of Gender Dysphoria, a Therapeutic Approach, and his wife also was heavily involved in this.
Thank the Lord for them.
Marcus, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This has been a long journey for you, hasn't it?
It has been a long journey. My wife blew the whistle in 2005, and that led to the first medical director, David Taylor, doing a report in 2006, which was buried. And his report says much of what is to follow afterwards with Dr. Bell's report and then the Cass report. So one of the things about this story is, why has it taken so long for this experimental treatment that's got no evidence base to be thoroughly looked at, when serious senior clinicians have been raising concerns for about 18 years?
That's a lot of children who will have gone through gender reassignment who perhaps maybe were not suitable candidates. I mean, when your wife blew the whistle, what was her sort of main concern? Because back in 2005, the whole sort of trans issue was not nearly as prominent as it is now.
No, very small numbers, completely different cohort. And yeah, when she blew the whistle, really what she was worried about was the fact that Tavistock is a place which is known for psychological approaches to psychological and developmental issues. And all of a sudden she was part of a team that was taking a medical approach to psychological problems with very small amounts of assessment, not enough rigour, not enough thorough thought about what was going on with these kids.
And it's interesting you talk about psychological problems, because I think the one thing that the Cass report stops short of saying is that a lot of these children might have been better served if they had simply had proper therapy and proper psychological therapy.
The whole thing is that when some kids are confronted, and many of these kids have got comorbid problems, we see them in clinics, Sue and myself, and they're often quite fragile and can't find their place in the world. And when puberty hits, with all of the psychological, sociological and physiological changes, they want to put a lid on things. And this is what this treatment has been doing. What was jettisoned was the old approach was watchful waiting, where there's an evidence base that says if you leave these kids and support them, they actually come to terms with these rather confusing and disturbing experiences called puberty. But it was jettisoned, again, for a sort of political reasons, ideological reasons, not for any research purposes, for the affirmation model, where you immediately go along with what the kid is thinking. Now, the kids are distressed, and as a mental health practitioner, you don't want to see people distressed, but it's very mistaken to sort of immediately fit in with a sort of ideal and belief without really exploring what is going on with these kids behind the scene. What is it they're struggling to manage? And this is the approach that's been missing for the past 18 years.
A lot of people who, in this debate have always just said, it just, as you say, it needs to be a watch and wait strategy, because what you don't want is for children to make irreversible decisions that they then regret later on in life. And the political thing is very interesting, because it became impossible for anyone to contest somebody who was saying that they had gender dysphoria, didn't it? Because and did you feel yourself that you were under pressure to acquiesce to those demands?
Well, when I was on the Board of Governors and Dave Bell's report arrived, for the first thing that we had to look at, I've been around the trust. I'd retired from the trust and gone back in a voluntary role, but I've been around the trust long enough to know when things are being shut down. And you would think this experimental treatment on vulnerable kids with no evidence base, people would be interested in looking at the downside of treatment and what the outcomes were. The trust didn't want to know. As they shut down, they buried Dave Taylor's report in 2006. They tried to bury not only Dave's report, but also his reputation. And then I realised that I was in a situation, I'd signed a non-disclosure agreement. The trust had got me where they wanted me. I couldn't say anything outside. And they wanted to just shut the whole thing down. So that's when I resigned and took it to the sort of outside world, if you like, so that people could sort of open things up and have a proper look at what was going on. It wasn't until that period, I don't think, that anyone listened. One of the things that I was been thinking about is the fact that usually medics come to a sort of consensus. There's research, there's debate, there's discussion. And what would be said is, well, there's two sides to this argument, and, there are different ways of approaching things. But some people are coming from an ideological position where they've got an absolute fixed belief. They're not really interested or curious about the research or the outcomes. And some of us are coming from a clinical position in which we have a responsibility, ethical responsibility, to think about long-term outcomes, downside of treatment, this sort of thing. But the two, it looks like a discussion. It actually isn't a discussion, because the ideologues are not listening to anything that's being said. So that's why nothing changed until the whole issue was taken outside the trust and brought to the attention of the public. And of course, we're seeing that in other areas like the post office scandal, where you can't understand how serious issues are being ignored for such a long period of time. Just coming back to the previous point you made, is Sue and I get at least 2 letters a week since 2009 from parents who are worried about their kids. They've got all sorts of difficulties finding a place in the world, and they suddenly come across the trans ideology, and they'll say to their parents, right, I want to transition. And their parents are worried out of their minds, as to what's going on. They don't trust some of the clinical services because the services have been so ideologically captured.
I could talk to you all day about this, because I am fascinated by it. Thank you so much, Marcus Evans. Very nice to talk to you.
So let us know your thoughts about this, whether you agree with Sarah and to myself to a point, by emailing reaction@dailymail.co.uk, or of course, you can comment below.
Still to come on The Reaction, the Princess of Wales is the most popular royal, according to a new poll. But is there any way back for Harry and Meghan, who are languishing at the bottom?
Plus, why lifelong Conservative voter Sarah thinks Labour's
Actually,
Wes
I did once
Streeting...
vote Green, but I was very young.
How can you admit to that?
I did. I was a child.
How young were you?
Well, it was my first voting, yes.
Oh, dear.
So you're allowed to do that when it's your first voting, aren't you?
I voted for Mrs Thatcher in my first election, aged 18. Just basically, you can't have been old enough, but I did. Sarah thinks, however, despite this terrible confession that she once voted for the Greens, that Labour's Wes Streeting, he's the Shadow Health Secretary, is right about the NHS needing radical reform.
And why Amy Winehouse's friends are furious about a new film of her life.
This is probably not a great shock to you, but a new poll by YouGov has found that Prince Harry and Meghan Duchess of Sussex, their popularity ratings have crashed in Britain. Only Prince Andrew is even less popular.
However, the Princess of Wales has pipped her husband, Prince William, to be named as the most popular royal, with Princess Anne, my crush, coming in third, followed by King Charles. I mean, I don't think we actually need a poll to know this. I don't think it needs to be an official poll to...
But you know, I think what is surprising is that Anne is quite so high up now, because for many years she was just forgotten. And I mean, I think she's fantastic, and I think ever since the Queen's funeral, when she was magnificent... people have got to see what a great stalwart she is, and she never puts a foot wrong.
Well, it's interesting. She's had a bit of a revival, and also I've noticed that young people have started to sort of notice her as well, particularly for her fashion choices. There's a lot of stuff on the internet about how cool she used to be when she was younger.
And of course she's still wearing the same clothes.
And all her fabulous clothes, which she still wears now.
Because she's got the most amazing figure.
She's got the most amazing figure, and she has this sort of, you know, in the 70s she was just that very cool chick.
She really was.
She really was.
And she was the first royal wedding I can remember to Mark Phillips. Foggy Mark, as he used to be known. And I think she's great. She does most engagements. But look, what is fabulous is that the Princess of Wales, who's having a pretty damn tough time, she's 73 or 74%, way ahead.
Yeah.
William, the Prince, future king. Charles is doing all right too. He's up on about 63, 64. I love the fact only 24% of the country like Meghan. Who are you, by the way, the 24%?
They've forgotten who she is.
Can you confess? Because how can you like her? What's there
But
to like about her?
Isn't it interesting about the Princess of Wales? Because I do think she is fast becoming as popular, if not more popular, than that other Princess of Wales.
Oh, I think
Princess
you're right about
Diana.
that. And look, I was a huge fan of Diana's. I mean, people often divided into camps. You were with her or you were with Charles, but I was a huge fan of Diana's. Always of the royal family overall. But she has never courted the popularity that Diana courted. She's never been briefing the media.
In a very different way.
She's never contributed to books about herself. She gets on with it. She does her own thing, but she knows her place is slightly one step behind.
But she's a very different character to Diana. But it's funny that I think she's occupying that same space in the sort of consciousness of the nation.
And of course, Diana was a daughter of an aristo. So you might have thought then, be a more natural fit. Kate Middleton is the daughter of middle-class people. Her mum was an air stewardess. Do you remember when there was one of those catty stories years ago? Dorster Manuel.
Yes, Dorster Manuel.
When he split up with her. But of course, she looks great, and we're all wishing her well with her recovery from cancer. I think it's fabulous that she's 50 points ahead of Meghan in the popularity. So that would be going down very badly in Montecito.
I'm sure that the Princess of Wales is not one to gloat, but she could be allowed a bit of gloatage.
And if you're watching this, and we hear rumours, lots of senior members of the royal family watchers, we're with you, Mum, and we want you to get better soon because we love you very, very much. And I wasn't asked in that poll, but if I had been, I'd have said the Princess of Wales.
Yes, completely. I mean, I think...
Although you like Princess Anne too.
Sorry?
Maybe you'd have split it between Anne and...
I mean, I think Anne is a different generation.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, she's slightly different sort of space, isn't she?
We should say about Prince Andrew, by the way, he's on 6% approval. I thought it would be minus 66%.
I wonder if that poll was taken before or after the release of that movie Scoop.
Oh, it was before that movie Scoop.
It was before, was it?
So if it had been afterwards, it would have been minus 96%.
Yes.
Because he came over that as boorish, pompous, not very bright, overweight. Mind you, Gillian Anderson playing Emily Maitlis appeared to be reprising her role as Mrs. Thatcher. Because Emily Maitlis does not speak like that.
It's very bizarre, I know. I'm not sure about the whole thing. Anyway, we'd love to know your reaction.
And who's your favourite royal?
Yes, who is your favourite royal?
And who's your least favourite royal? We don't mind if you say Meghan Markle and Harry. We don't mind at all.
Still to come on The Reaction, why Labour are right to say that the NHS needs radical reform.
And why are Amy Whitehouse's mates absolutely livid about that new film of her life, which was premiered, it was all on the red carpet this week.
And a small personal thing, why I hate computerised cars. We don't need gadgets and gizmos to drive.
I don't know what they are, so you'll have to explain to me.
Now, for some time, I have been arguing that our health service needs radical reform. In fact, I said that if I were Rishi Sunak and I had nothing to lose, as he does not, I would probably come up with a very radical plan. So as a Conservative voter, I find myself this week agreeing with Wes Streeting, who is Shadow Health Minister for Labour. And that's quite frustrating because the Tories have had 14 years to sort out
Can you remember the name of the Health Secretary?
It's a lady.
It's a lady.
I can't remember it, but you've just put me on the spot and I've forgotten her name.
Victoria Atkins.
That's correct.
And you know the reason I remember
Victoria
that, Sarah, is because I remember her father, who was a hopeless sports minister in John Major's government. She's very nice. She's the one with oddly frizzy hair.
Yeah.
She's very nice.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But what does she do? Nothing. And Wes Streeting is absolutely right that there needs to be more private sector.
Well, what's so interesting is that he's really stuck his neck out. I mean, I don't know if this could be career suicide for him, because whenever I've had a conversation with any minister and also Prime Minister about the health service.
That's a good name drop.
And I said, listen, something needs to be done. We need to move to a sort of social insurance model like the ones that they have in Italy and France, which work very well. Why can't we do this? Why are you just going to let this thing carry on? Because it is just a money pit. There's just no amounts of money that you can throw into it that are ever going to be enough. And the reply has always been, it's just, we know all this, everyone knows this, but there's just no one will touch it with a barge pole because the NHS is a sacred cow.
It is.
And I think that's been true, but I think in the last few years, it's started to malfunction so badly that even people who really think that it is a sacred cow have started to say, well, maybe we should do some reform. And I just think it's very brave of Wes Streeting, who is a Labour politician, to come up and to say, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to do something about this.
And he's got a very personal experience with the NHS because he went through very difficult cancer and the NHS saved him, as it saved so many people. But he would have seen the NHS literally as a patient as opposed to a politician, and that's quite interesting. But I still think, has his boss got it in him?
Oh, I doubt it.
Is he radical
No.
enough?
And the thing is, in my piece there, I write, the problem is the real people, the real obstacle that Wes will face if they get in,
trade unions,
is the trade unions, but also the civil servants, because they won't do anything that doesn't conform to them. They basically think they run the country.
They do.
And if they don't like as a minister, they don't like your policy, they'll just obstruct it.
I know.
And Wes has said, I'm going to stand up to sort of, middle class lefties. Those middle class lefties are the civil service.
They are.
This is the issue. And that's the other thing that Tories have failed to do, and this is something that Dominic Cummings was right about, is they have failed to reform the civil service.
They did.
And if they had done that, things would be a lot easier.
Remember when Dominic was working for Boris Johnson, he said he wanted to bring in misfits and weirdos?
Yeah.
Of which he's the prime candidate. He is the most weirdest and the biggest misfit.
But I think that was his way of saying,
so Humphrey has to go.
Exactly. And it's true because it's become very stagnant, the civil service, and it really is just it's the same people employing the same people who have the same ideas. And the thing is, its job is to implement policy. Its job is not to make policy or judge on policy, and it doesn't function. It's not fit for purpose in that way. But I think it's very unlikely that he will be able to get his reforms through. And of course, we all know that when a new government gets in, there's always that one minister who has lots of really good radical ideas,
and they get squashed.
And then they get squashed or fired.
Yeah.
I don't know if we know anyone who that happened to.
I think we do. I think he was Education Secretary for a couple of years under David Cameron, and he had some very good ideas, and his reforms for education are now paying rich dividends. I think his surname was Gove.
In fact, the only thing that this Tory, you could argue that his are the only reforms that have actually made any difference.
But I said to a very senior shadow cabinet minister just the other day, he said, how would it work for us in government? Who's going to be the most popular? Who's going to be the most unpopular? He said, I'll tell you without a doubt who's going to be the most unpopular cabinet minister, and he'll be under huge pressure very quickly. Wes Streeting, because he will not be able to turn around those NHS waiting lists very quickly. He's not going to necessarily get that militant, terrible British Medical Association union stopping the doctors going on strike.
He's got to this idea to use private capacity, hasn't he?
Good luck getting that past the BMA.
Well, they did that during COVID. The government spent a fortune buying up all the private beds and then never used them.
I know.
I never really understood why that happened.
But he will become very quickly, and he is without a doubt, probably the favourite to succeed to Keir Starmer, because the Labour Party will never elect a woman leader. So Angela Rayner, whether you paid your national insurance or not, love, you're never going to be leader. But he is the favourite, in my view, to take over if anything, if Starmer got knocked over by a bus. But he could be the first casualty in a reshuffle, because the clamour for change on the NHS is going to be so great. And I don't think he'll be allowed to do the radical stuff, and he'll be out.
Well, it may also be that it is just a trap to lure in Waitrose women like me, who are Conservatives, who can't bring themselves to vote Labour, but who are quite disillusioned with the Tories. And who
Only quite disillusioned.
Very disillusioned, and who might be tempted to vote for a Labour with a Wes Streeting in it.
Well, he's and of course he's young and got a good backstory, gay.
Got a good name as well, Wes Streeting.
Yeah. And
sounds like a pop band.
Working class boy, single parent. Doesn't go on about being the son of a single parent quite as much as Angela Rayner. And nobody goes on about it as much as her. Now, we'd like to know what you think. Are you with Sarah Vine? Perhaps we do have to consider Labour, because they may be truly radical and may finally sort out the NHS. Email reaction at dailymail.co.uk or comment below. Now, the next story I found shocking. The parents of a Michigan teenager who shot and killed 4 classmates were each sentenced to more than a decade behind bars after a jury convicted them of manslaughter. This is unprecedented, where parents are being held responsible in a school shooting.
It's
shocking in a sense that I'm rather pleased.
Well, I mean, if they...
Got to do something out in that ridiculous country, haven't they?
Where did the kid get the gun from?
Yeah. What were the parents doing?
Exactly.
And the gun culture in America is so appalling. Joe Biden has done nothing about it. Obama had 2 terms, did nothing about it. They're all terrified of the gun lobby. So maybe this is the only way, Sarah, that I was completely shocked to read it.
I mean, it is quite shocking. It is quite a shocking ruling, and it is, it will change.
I mean, they did not pull the trigger.
No.
They weren't there.
No.
The child may have had mental issues, must have had mental issues to pull a trigger on his classmate.
Yeah.
But is this the only way? But the length of the sentence.
It's seriously long. And I mean, I think that, children do terrible things without their parents' knowledge. Yeah. And so I think it's quite an interesting philosophical debate. How much am I responsible for what my son does or my daughter does when I'm not present?
Yeah.
I mean, they're okay, they're over 18 now,
sure,
so I guess that's different.
But I mean, parents in America think it's completely normal, like you and I may have a phone in our back pocket, have a gun in your back pocket. I mean, it's a disgusting culture. But I think we should apply the argument here. Should we make parents more liable and responsible for sometimes of what happens to their kids here? Yeah,
I mean, I would think that as a parent who has had teenagers, that would make my blood run cold.
Yeah.
Because I would think that,
you're going to lose your liberty.
Children do odd. Every child goes through a phase where they do stupid things, and you just have to sort of pray that they don't kill themselves or do something awful.
Or kill somebody else in America.
Or kill somebody else. But the idea that, you could end up in jail, and then what would happen to your other children if you had other children? I think it would. I think it's a bit of a. I think it's probably
too draconian.
I would say so. Yes.
I know. I think the sentence.
But on the other hand, I don't
think
you should bring your child up. Think that a gun is normal.
Perhaps a year in jail or 2, even a year in jail would be a pretty big deterrent, because you're going to lose your job, your income, your reputation. Yeah. That maybe you then take the gun off the kid.
But exactly, it's going to put people off having children.
Yeah, you can get a gun in America aged 18 when you can't legally buy alcohol till you're 21. Yeah. What the hell is that in that country?
But I do
think the free world.
It's quite a terrifying dystopian thought.
It is.
In my view.
I read it 3 times because I was so shocked. I thought, it can't be right.
Yeah.
And then I get to thinking, well, maybe there's some. I mean, the sentence I think is extreme, but I just think there's something in it, and maybe that's what's needed.
Yeah. Anyway, let us know what you think. The thing annoying me this week,
apart from me,
is this new list of sort of gimmicks that they have in cars. So cameras instead of wing mirrors, Swarovski headlights and puddle lights for when you get out of the car, and
puddle lights,
video games and consoles and all that sort of stuff. And cars are just getting more and more gizmo-y. And I would like to say I have a very old car. that is completely analogue, because I hate having a car that bosses me around and tells me what to do. My car is so old it doesn't even have a cup holder, which my children say is prehistoric. But I worry about...
How old is your car?
I think it's about 15 years old.
So almost Jurassic.
It's almost Jurassic, yeah. It's just you, Les.
Right.
Just about you, Les. But I have this... So more and more cars you see, they have computers, onboard computers, that can be updated. They tell you how to park, where to sit, what to do. Sometimes when they tell you which bit of the road to be on, because if you sort of go over... And I'm just like, this takes all responsibility away from the driver.
Yeah.
And the thing about good driving is that you should just be focusing on the driving and nothing else. And if you've got all these lights and beeps and blobs, it's very dangerous, I think.
Which is why we stop people being able to use their mobile phones,
yes,
because it's a distraction from driving.
Exactly.
And now you're fiddling with
Now you've got cars that have got computer games on them that you can play on the front console. I mean, what's that all about?
Yeah, it's when you're stuck in a traffic jam,
I mean,
if you're a major city is everywhere.
Exactly.
But that is appalling. And for the children, I suppose, because children can't just look out the window and play I Spy. Am I being boring?
Or just,
or read a book.
Go to sleep.
Talk.
Or fight,
what about
which
a
is what my
conversation?
children used to do, which is what I used to do with my brother in the back of the car.
Did you
just
really?
Pinch him the whole time, torture him. I mean, the point is that I think the sort of over computerization of our world is a big problem, AI, etc. But particularly with cars, because, what's to stop somebody hacking all the computers in all the cars and then just making them all drive over the edge of a cliff?
Yeah. Well,
anyway, maybe it's just a bit mad, but...
The answer is...
Enough.
You could do an Andrew Pierce. I've not owned a car since 1988.
Have you not?
No.
Why?
Because I started working in Parliament for the Times in 1988. Where would you park a car?
Yeah, quite.
And I never got back to having one. My partner has a car. It's a very old Jaguar. He doesn't really want me to sit in it. And that definitely doesn't have a cup holder.
I know, but that's because you eat a lot of digestive biscuits and they make terrible crumbs. I suspect that's
I've just had my first digestive biscuit because I thought it was still Lent.
Anyway, let us know your thoughts. Do you have one of those super computerised cars, or do you, like me, have a silly old analogue?
What brand is your car?
It's an ancient Mercedes.
Right.
They go on
Not even
forever.
British. You didn't even buy British.
No.
Which is a shame. So you can let us know what you think about that by emailing reaction@dailymail.co.uk. And are you with me? See, she voted Green. I've never voted Green, but I don't have a car.
I only did it once.
You'd think so. Now, we love reading your comments, especially the rude ones about Sarah on Reaction. Last week, we discussed Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling, who challenged Scotland's ludicrous new hate crime laws. By the way, Sarah, within 48 hours, there were 10,000 complaints. Isn't that hilarious?
I know, hilarious. Cheryl on YouTube says, absolutely agree with you, Sarah. It's just terrifying how Orwellian our world has become. J.K. Rowling is to be admired for her stance and a heroine for standing so bravely for women's rights in an atmosphere of vitriol. History will judge her well.
I agree. And Sharat on YouTube says, Canada here? How fabulous is that? I stand with JK. I think she's a legend and there are many world leaders who could take a lesson on taking a stand for what's right, regardless of the politics.
Kirsty on YouTube says, J.K. Rowling is a queen. As a Scottish woman, I really don't have the words to express how grateful I am for what she did for us on the 1st of April. She is a brave lady with the courage of her convictions. I think she should have a damehood.
I don't know why she hasn't.
Well, and they need to do it.
Well, the Tories should do it quick before Labour does.
Because Keir Starmer thinks women can have penises.
Yeah.
JK is now surpassing James Blunt as the person trolling the trolls on Twitter. My favourite to someone complaining about the so-called JK Rowling cult was this. Good work, cult member 28749. Your laughter has caused the cow's milk to dry up, the crops to wither and frail men to quail before you. Catch you at midnight for a debrief and please bring your own toad and broomstick. I love her.
More of that, please. Now, if you want to message us about any of this week's talking points, you can comment below or email reaction@dailymail.co.uk.
It's time for my favourite part of the show, Showbiz Reaction with our Showbiz Supremo, Katie Hind. Katie, this is something I've also written about this week, the new Amy Winehouse film, Back to Black.
Yeah, it's not got the reaction I think that they were hoping for, has
The
it?
critics have been unkind, to put it mildly.
Yeah, well, our own review today gave it 1 star. I think, at the heart of it is probably, you know, a fairly enjoyable watch. I think the story behind it is what the problem is here. You know, this was a very, very damaged, poorly, you know, young genius whose parents, you know, we saw on the red carpet almost kind of celebrating her death.
Really
and
weird.
it just didn't sit comfortable. Did it sit at all comfortably, did it?
And there was also the betrayal of the boyfriend who came out of it almost as a hero. What was his name?
So actually, both the boyfriend and the father, Mitch, so Blake Fielder Civil, was married to Amy Winehouse.
Where is he these days? He's disappeared completely, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's disappeared from. I mean, he disappeared from sort of, I guess, public life.
Yeah.
You know, around the time, you know, she moved on very quickly from their marriage ending.
Did he get lots of money out of the marriage?
Not particularly.
Because he wasn't a particularly
But
talented.
he was the one, wasn't he, who sort of got her?
Yeah, so he
really
himself was admitted that he was preparing some heroin for himself in front of her, and she said, "Oh, can I have some?" And he said he didn't exactly, you know, put up a big fight for her not to have any. Right. So he is the person that, I mean, certainly her friends, who I speak to a number of them, blame him.
Yeah.
For you know that part, you know, for I mean I think, you know, she drank, and I think she probably took certain drugs, but I think the heroin was the real turning point of her life, and it was you know, while she was with him, but he's portrayed as the piece I wrote today, like a kind of Disney prince, you know, like a
romantic
really
hero.
decent guy, you know, and he wasn't.
No.
And what I don't really understand. So the background to this is that Mitch was very involved in the making of this this movie. I'm even told that it was his idea. That he was approaching people in the industry. I haven't corroborated that fact, but he certainly was behind it, and so, you know, he's been portrayed really well in it. So you've got to kind of ask what's really going on here. Another issue is that they do a lot of filming at her old flat in Camden. Now, when she died, Mitch got that flat, so he still owns that flat, and he allowed the filming to take place.
I just think it's all. I just feel like this.
In her old home?
Yes. So there's a scene where she's taken out, the actress Marissa Abuela is taken out in an ambulance with with breathing apparatus on.
And it's actually from the home where she died.
From her home where she died, which Mitch owns. Now that to me
taste.
is really bad taste.
Really awful.
And I think as well, we spoke about Sam Taylor-Johnson a few weeks ago.
Because she's the director.
She's supposed to be like the goddess, isn't she?
This is one who's married to a much
Aaron
younger,
Taylor-Johnson,
who could be the next James Bond.
Who apparently,
is not the next James Bond.
So this is a blow for her, because she's had a pretty good career, hasn't she?
I don't know what she's done getting involved in this one.
No.
Because it doesn't matter what.
Is it going to be a box office bomb?
I don't know if it'll be a box office bomb, because I think people will be fascinated by it, but it doesn't make it
well,
right.
There's a perfectly good Netflix documentary you can watch about Amy Winehouse, which is actually very good, which came out about 5 years ago, I think, which has a lot of really good footage of her. I would much rather watch footage of her, in her own words, than this sort of bizarre. I just feel like these people are sort of picking over the carcass of this rather tragic, sort of rather sad girl who died.
She wasn't even 30, was she?
Died. She was 27, wasn't she?
Terrible waste.
And I mean, I just think her music was just heartbreakingly beautiful. But I'd just rather listen to her music and watch her. I don't understand. I mean, I sort of feel like she's kind of entering, you know, Marilyn Monroe territory, that people are just going to constantly go over it all of the time.
Because she died so young.
Sorry?
Because she died so young.
Yeah, yeah.
And she was so troubled as well. You know, it makes her a good story, doesn't it?
And she was beautiful, and she was, you know, fragile. And if you watch the last, you know, the footage of her in her final days, months, weeks, you know, she was tiny and sort of desperately sort of sad and lost.
Touch of the Edith Piaf was late 40s when she died, but a touch of the little sparrow about her, wasn't there?
Well, she was a sparrow. That's a good. She was like a little
and Edith
sparrow.
Piaf had a magnificent voice, but drink and drugs destroyed her, and it destroyed Amy Winehouse 20 years younger than Edith Piaf.
And you have to look at these biopics, don't you? Because they're about these people that are dead. Yeah. But the cash that they generate, you know, it really is, when you think about it, quite sick. Yeah. And somebody somewhere is making a lot of money out of this.
I agree. I just don't think it's very respectful. That's what I think.
I don't think it's very respectful either.
Let's also talk about another high-profile woman, Fern Britton.
Oh, Fern Britton.
So why are we talking about her?
Well, Fern Britton, after leaving this morning,
I'm so confused about this morning
where she hated Philip Schofield.
She hated Philip Schofield.
She hated him.
And I don't think Philip Schofield liked her very much either.
Hated
I think
her.
we're fair to say that.
Fair Terence, fair ground to say that.
And she just disappeared.
She did.
She just disappeared off the face of the earth. She moved to Cornwall and just has a lovely life, you know, in her local village and, you know, getting involved with the local community. And then she had this big return early this year on Celebrity Big Brother.
She did very well.
Where she did really well, didn't she? And I think ITV were like,
she's rather good.
She's rather good, and actually,
why isn't she on the
we've been
telly?
missing her.
For a job.
She's great. She's so relatable and so you know, she's been through, you know, everything, hasn't she? She's divorced twice. She's somebody that the viewers love.
She's had a gastric band, hasn't she?
Well, that was one of her downfalls.
Was that one of your scoops?
No, it wasn't one of my scoops.
Why was it one of her downfalls? Did she fib about it?
Well, I think she was led. I think
was
fibbing was a
before
bit.
gastric bands were acceptable.
Oh,
so
and she lost lots of weight, and she was, you know, explaining this weight loss away.
Yeah,
and then it was actually the news of the world, the now defunct News of the World that revealed that she had a gastric band.
Yeah.
So she's had this kind, and she actually went back to this morning for the first time to sit on the sofa to be interviewed by Kat Deeley and Ben Shepherd, who. And it's the first time she's gone back, so it was obviously a different studio, different host. But these bosses at ITV are seeing her, thinking, well, actually, we can put her to some quite good use.
Yeah, yeah.
So hopefully, we'll see quite a lot more of her in the coming months.
I liked her.
Yes, I mean, I don't really watch daytime TV, to be perfectly honest.
Well, you're on it sometimes.
I am sometimes on it.
You are.
Well,
you're on it all the time.
Oh.
That's it for today. Join us, well, not me, because I'm on holiday. Not holiday, really. It's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
She's 40 next week.
Andrew will be joined by my colleague, Amanda Patel, for more reaction to the stories making the headlines.
We will miss you a little bit.
No, you won't.
We did buy her a cake, but they've eaten it. Make sure you like and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. So see you again next Wednesday. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.